Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Linelda, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman,
Present.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Attorney Rubin, Town Manager Lavity.
Present.
Thank you.
Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Flag of the United States of
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions or deletions for the agenda? Anybody? No? Can we then have a motion to approve the agenda as it is?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Next, we have a presentation, proclamation. And this is for Randy Elliott. Mr. Elliott, are you here? Thank you for coming in. And this is our pleasure.
And your wife, Bobby.
How are you today? Excellent. This proclamation is honoring veteran Randy Elliott for his contributions in the U.S. Army from Vietnam through to Kuwait. Whereas Randy Elliott grew up in Florida, and after college, he enlisted in the United States Army, became an officer after ROTC, attended airborne school and Ranger training, and was ultimately assigned as a nuclear weapons officer in Germany. Whereas Randy Elliott's desire to join the action in Vietnam led him to volunteer for the famous 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, where he was promoted to captain and became a company commander for the 506th Infantry, to include 4 platoons with a total of 120 or more elite infantry officers. Whereas Randy Elliott, from 1967 to 68, spent 17 months in Vietnam, where he experienced some of the worst fighting of the entire war in areas from the Central Highlands to the Chu Chi to the defense of Saigon. During the large unit battles, during the Tet Offensive, he was severely wounded, spending a year in the hospitals. Whereas Randy Elliott was medically discharged, but was later able to join the United States Army as a reservist, and over the years rose to the rank of full colonel. Whereas Randy Elliott wrote the book titled Moonscape: Thoughts of the War, a war history book about himself, his exploits focused on the impact of the war on youth who are called to battle, and to show the horror of war in stark and unvarnished fashion, that is, in truth. Whereas Randy Elliott simultaneously worked for the Department of State as a Foreign Service officer and became an analyst for the Middle East affairs, and was assigned to the United States Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger's staff. Whereas Randy Elliott, during the Operations Desert Storm, was activated from the reserves and assigned to help restore the government of Kuwait after the devastation to the country by Saddam Hussein's forces. Whereas Randy Elliott, with 17 colonels in his Kuwait task force, commanded, and the success they had in 1 year from 1990 to 91, was promoted to brigadier general and was awarded the Legion of Merit Medal. Whereas Randy Elliott and his wife, Roberta, have lived in the town of Highland Beach for the past 15 years and enjoyed its beauty, peace, and quiet. Whereas the town of Highland Beach, Florida, recognizes and thanks Randy Elliott for his commitment, heroic contributions, and sacrifices serving the United States 101st Airborne Division, placing himself in harm's way to protect the freedoms of the nation and the good of the people. Now, therefore, I, Douglas Hillman, Mayor of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, on behalf of the Town Commission, do hereby honor Randy Elliott, a Vietnam hero. In witness, wherefore, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, to be affixed this 6th day of April, 2021. We thank you. The book.
Sure.
Yeah, anything you want to do vaccinated? We're all vaccinated.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Very nice to meet you. Awesome. Very nice. Yes, this is mine.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is excellent. Very good, General. All
Appreciate it.
right, thank you. Glad you could make it. Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to tell John not to write so much.
Now you need a drink.
Absolutely. Very nice.
Just for the record, Attorney Trasivia joined the meeting at 1:38.
And just for the record, it was a pleasure interviewing General Elliott, just the nicest guy, who really was severely wounded on a level that you don't want to hear about. But his, again, having been in Vietnam, I know exactly what he went through, and it was the toughest fighting of the war because it was big units, not small units. We're talking battalion, thousands of troops on both sides, enemy against the U.S. is unbelievable. The story is also amazing. But anyways, thank you all. Appreciate your support.
You're doing a terrific job finding these people, John.
Do we have a copy of that in our library?
Right now.
Okay. Moving on, do we have anybody in public comments?
We have no one that registered for public comments today.
Okay, so public comments are now closed. Announcements, Charter Review Board vacancies, where do we stand on that?
We have an agenda item that's coming up on the agenda. We can
Okay,
discuss.
so we'll skip over until that. Board of Adjustments and Appeals, there are 2 vacancies. Code Enforcement, there's 1 vacancy. Financial Advisory Board, there are 2. Planning Board, there's 1. Natural Resources Preservation and Advisory, there's 1 and 3 upcoming. Upcoming meetings, April 8th, Planning Board, April 20th, the next Town Commission, April 22nd, Financial Advisory Board, and the 27th is Code Enforcement. There are no board action reports, so let's move on to ordinances. Begins on page 10. and this is ordinance number 2021-004, and that's the 10-year water supply work, and we're on our second read. I'll
Yep.
turn it over to Marshall.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Yeah, this is our second reading. We've gone through all the agency reviews. Ingrid, do you want to bring us up to speed on the last little bits? Global Tech representatives are here with us today that drafted the document to answer any questions. But again, all the state agencies, no comment, so they're supportive.
Good afternoon. For the record, Ingrid Allen. As Mr. Labadie just indicated, we received no comment from the state review agencies. That includes South Florida Water Management District and the State Land Planning Agency, the Department of Economic Opportunity. Since you last saw this in January, there have been no changes to the strike through and underline that you see in those various elements of the comprehensive plan. So there's been, as I said, no changes since then. And again, we got the thumbs up from the various review agencies. So this is just your adoption hearing. And as Mr. Labadie indicated, we do have our representative from Global Tech that actually prepared the plan. So be happy to address any questions.
Start with you, John.
Just a quick one. This is a 10-year plan update adoption versus the 20 that has been done in the past. So at the end of 10 years, do we then do another 20-year plan?
I believe at the end of this 10, we'll do another 10, and maybe Julia can, I see she's nodding. Is that correct? Okay. 10 years.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you did it. You got to come to the microphone.
Please state your name for the public.
For the record, my name is Julia Backlund. And to answer your question, yes, the next one will be in 10 years. There'll be modification to this in 10 years. But if the state agency itself, the South Florida Water Management District, does any modifications to their current supply plan, then you'll have to update it accordingly within 18 months of their modification.
And again, you represent who?
Global Tech?
Global Tech, guys.
Yes,
Very
and we authored the supply plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No questions?
No,
Peggy,
thank you.
Anything?
No, sir, thank you.
Natasha?
Nothing for me.
Nothing from me either. Back to you, Marshall.
Okay, so then we need a motion to approve the ordinance on second read.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2021-004 on the second read.
I second the motion.
Okay,
Okay, do we need a roll call on it, or is,
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick Seidman,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
and Mayor Hillman.
yes?
And just for the record, we did not have public comments for this item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there is no consent agenda. Let's move on to item 10 in unfinished business A, which is on page 45. That's the continued discussion on the revised ordinance regarding right-of-way. I'll start off on it, if everybody's okay with that. I noticed we're still having a great deal of attention spent on news racks. We say in it that news racks will be banned. So then why do we need to put paragraph after paragraph on news racks?
The pieces that we're modifying are within the section that also includes news rack, and that's not being removed with this subject matter. We're going to do that on a secondary issue. We'll take care of the news racks issue.
Okay, takes care of that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Second, the last meeting, we talked about either referencing or putting in, probably just referencing how to construct swales. And I didn't notice any reference to that in here.
No, there is not a reference in there. So either we could add a reference referring them back to the construction handbook, and we add those elements as appendices to the construction handbook. So if somebody wants that with a permit, they all have to sign off on that by statute or by ordinance. We could add that section in there. There are some samples that Ingrid and I have been looking at. We'll find a way to kind of adjust those and give some samples as appendices, because it depends from site to site, as we had that discussion in our last meeting, but we will get that. Again, this is not a first read. this hasn't even gone to the planning board. This is just, do you want to move it any further? So that would be something that we
Right.
could add, that during this process, Ingrid will look to get those appendices for the construction handbook as part of this.
Is that the way to handle it?
I would think it'd
More
be
of a
the best.
question than
Yeah,
anything.
I think the best way would be to add it as an appendix to the construction handbook because it's the document that everybody that gets a permit signs and receives. So we should just add it as an appendices to it.
Okay. John, turn it over to you.
So, Mr. Mayor, you're absolutely right on it. I identified racks as a problem and swales and in providing a definition. Now, from the input that I've gotten from citizens, there's a couple concerns. One is that this isn't making much reference to swales, so I think that's an important element here and would encourage more detail in describing what a swale is and I guess how to build one.
So what we've done in here, as you'll see in the versions here, we've improved the definition of swale.
Right.
So we've expanded to what exactly that is using description. Basically, it's a depressed linear feature that stores and conveys stormwater. So it kind of gives you that basic visual intent. So that has been inserted to that. Swales has been inserted. If you look into chapter 25 in the revisions, in 5 locations, we've kept on hitting the word swale and the concepts of swale, that they can't be impacted, they can't be disturbed or altered without approvals. So basically, we've hit it in multiple locations in chapter 25 as part of these ordinances to kind of get that concept that swales are to be considered in section 25.5, then lawful deposits. And it said offensive matter, gutter and swale obstructions. We did it in 25.7, disturbing the surface of a street or swale.
Give me a page number, please.
This is on page of your agenda, which would be 49. And then
50, yeah.
so we got 25.7, disturbing the street or swale or bike path restoration. So if you do mess it up, you got to put it back. Obstructing or injuring pavement, curbing, swale has been inserted, sidewalk and bike path. Into definitions, we improved that definition of swale. So much of what you see in these improvements, swales are in there. Also, we've even gone into chapter 28, which is the landscape design, and said swales within the right of way should not be altered and modified as part of your landscape design. So we've got swales, which were really only referenced in one spot, saying you couldn't put a news rack in a swale. And we've expanded that throughout chapter 25 to say swale shall be considered as a public resource, if you will, like a bike path or infrastructure, if you will, that has to be preserved and protected as part of your planning activities. So we've added it and expanded it throughout the ordinance. And that was the intent we had, or instruction we got from the
Yes.
commission and Commissioner Shoemaker and specifically was,
Yes.
instead of a standalone ordinance, we were going to push out the concepts of protecting swales or encouraging them throughout the ordinance structure. So that's kind of how we've done it here.
So, and that emphasizes the swale piece to this. On the racks, to come back to you, Mayor, the racks are really defined more as periodicals, newspapers, and literature like that. I'd be concerned about boxes, metal boxes that will hold advertising materials, not necessarily periodicals. I think we're saying we don't want any metal boxes, period.
Out.
And that should be out. I just wanted to clarify, it's just not news boxes like USA Today.
And that'll be a separate
Yes.
concept introduced to the commission at a later point in time via Ingrid. We'll write something up that will strike that from it. Basically says news racks are prohibited. Boom, we're done. And we clean out about 30 pages, it seems like, out of the ordinance.
And on my last point is page 45 in the first section under the summary, remove pyramid blocks or similar yard markers. And then below, add dome-shaped buttons shall not have wood stakes. Now, as I understand it, the domes have stakes underneath the dome where they push it into the ground to stabilize it. That's separate from just separate wood stakes that have nothing to do with domes, right? Is that what we're saying?
I'm going to defer to Ingrid on that. It's not popping right up into my mind. But there was comments that you didn't want metal stakes, and we said we left wood stakes. So we should probably take the wood stakes out because I think they would both be just as dangerous, wood and or metal stakes.
Yeah, it's stakes. And that's separate from dome. It seemed like dome-shaped buttons. You can have stakes underneath the dome buttons to stake them into the ground. And I'm just trying to, separate them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I re-listened to that particular meeting and there was a reference to not having wood stakes, but if you'd like to provide
Metal,
that additional
wood.
clarity, when it comes back before the commission, we can.
Separate
revise it
from dome.
accordingly. Pardon?
It's separate in addition to domes. That we've said that dome-shaped buttons, as long as they meet a certain size, you don't
Time
want.
out. Peggy, you're the one that brought it up. Are you comfortable with that?
Comfortable with which part?
Having wood stakes?
No.
That have the domes that
Yeah.
secure the dome?
No, you can buy a dome.
That's
with-
why I wanted to jump.
Thank you,
over here
sir.
for a minute.
You can buy a dome that's just the button dome. They
Period.
make other domes with the button dome, but 1 to 2 foot metal stake that inserts into ground holds, the concrete dome is cast with the stake. There have been times, especially in times of rain and soft earth around it, they will come loose.
Right.
People have been killed by things in the right of way. I don't know why we're allowing almost anything in the right of way, but just the plain dome, no stake.
Plain dome. no
Just, yes, sir,
stake.
just the plain cement dome,
With
which
no
I will repeat are very hard to find even as such, because the county does not allow any such things in the right of way if we were in the county lands.
So you're saying no stake?
Yes, sir,
period,
no stakes.
Whether it be even a wood stake?
Yes,
No.
sir. I mean, you've got stakes on A1A and side streets right now. If a bicyclist falls onto one of them, I mean, it happens.
Okay, there's a distinction between putting stakes in the ground that, line the property versus a dome that has a stake underneath it to secure it to the ground. You're saying that dome with a stake is okay.
No,
she's
no
not.
stakes,
In
just
which
a plain
case-
dome.
And in which case, if you don't have something to hold the dome there, these domes are going to start, moving all around and they'll end up in the street.
They don't move around. I've had them.
You've had them.
Yes, sir.
And I'll
They
go on
pretty
your
much sit
experience.
there if you have a decent grassy area and everything. I mean, this whole,
There's got to be a way to, to adhere it to the ground. Otherwise, I
no,
can't
you
believe
don't.
they
It
won't
just
move.
sits there. I promise.
Okay.
It
Then I'll-
does. I mean,
I'll
we have to
defer.
think about the right of way being, the function of it is so that pedestrians and cars have somewhere to go if there's a problem on the roadway. And if we put an impediment there, I'm sorry, but it's better to just have your grass torn up a little bit now and then than to have an accident and have that person harmed.
So just to clarify, the way the ordinance is currently written, and that is before you today on page 49, you could see at the top of the page, letter C is dome-shaped buttons, no more than 4 inches in height with a diameter no greater than 6 inches without metal or wood stakes. So you would like to keep it the way it is?
Right.
Okay. Unless you all disagree, decide another way, then
You okay with
I
that?
that was my 3 points, my third point of clarification.
Okay, we're good.
If this seems in your conversation like maybe it's time to take it the next step, you could go right to first read, or what we've had been doing in the past to send it to the planning board for a review and consideration with recommendation back before a first read.
I certainly would support going to a first read, but there's one more question besides this, and that is, again, certain residents are concerned that this is being used to raise more revenue, that we're going to charge, for permits to plant a tree in the right of way and to replace a tree, even if it's, an approved tree. And so this is nothing more than another money grab by the town. I mean, that's flat out what they're saying.
Okay, what's your feeling?
Well, we're talking about not charging for these permits. If it's in the right of way, it's replacement of a tree and it's an approved tree. I mean, it's not a problem. I don't see it as a problem.
So if I could clarify that a little bit further in the language that is written in here, I think what Ingrid had written in there is pretty good, is there's a waiver to the permit process, not to sound like this cumbersome thing, but if you call, for all intents and purposes, to keep it local, if you call Pat before you do anything and he looks at your project and says, you're fine, you're not going to mess with any of the utilities, you don't need a permit. Only time you're going to need a permit is if it's going to have an impact, a negative impact to the right of way. So there is, and especially because people coming back to the trees, but the reason why we put trees in there, we don't want trees on top of water mains. We don't want trees on top of gate valves. We don't want trees a foot off the road or right next to a hydrant. So you don't need a permit per se to get a tree. You just need to call Public Works and tell them where you're going to plant it, put a little paint on there. Pat will go by and say, okay, you're clear of the lines and you're not next to a hydrant or right up on the road. So those are the things that we're looking at. And again, you guys gave the instruction of, hey, we don't want to charge for these permits. We just want to be able to have a conversation with the property owner before they undertake a project. So,
And so for those of you who are watching this, the intent is to have some control by the town. We know that the A1A controls supposedly the right-of-ways with the state. Well, if the state doesn't, it is our concern as well, and we need to protect our town even when the state is remiss or just doesn't get to it. At the same time, we don't want to have problems with people digging up in the wrong places, everything from cables to pipes, whatever. So that's the intent, not to be a money grab.
Are we all comfortable?
I just have a question. So you said if somebody wants to plant in that area, they just go to Pat. Is that what you mean by this, by first obtaining a right-of-way permit? Is that what you mean? Talk to Pat, that's a right-of-way permit?
so no, but it
I'm on
does.
page 48.
If you go further on, it says that you could less waived by the Public Works Director. So basically, it requires the property owner to make contact before engaging in a project. Now, if the project involves true construction as it's defined or improvement, which is, we've focused that more on construction. We've gotten away from ground cover and shrubs and mailbox. We're away from that. Now we're talking, you want some type of large improvement in the right of way that is construction related, you're going to need a permit. But if you're in and you're going to do a landscaping project or, you know, hey, I really wanted this type of tree to be installed, yes, you would need a permit unless the Public Works Department says you're not going to be near any of this infrastructure, for which then you don't need a permit. So we can waive the permit requirement if you reach out and say, hey, I'm planting a couple trees here. We'll just go out and take a look to say, okay, you're not on top of the main, water main or the sewer or the storm, or you're not right on top of a hydrant where it's going to grow over and into the hydrant, maybe a street light. Make sure we're clear of street lights. We've been talking about that.
Cable.
If we were involved in some of that, we could, you know, steer those property owners a little bit away from it, and then they wouldn't need a permit. But if it's this wholesale construction, you're still going to need that, whether it's with a building permit or just a pure right-of-way permit.
And you wouldn't be able to put in here what would likely be approved or likely not approved, because it just all depends, right? It just all depends on, you couldn't list out what would likely be approved or would likely not be approved. It really is dependent on.
Many folks would like that. And I think we started down that path. There's just so many
It's just too many
variables
variables,
and interests and desires to do things. Like this all started with protecting our infrastructure and protecting drainage improvements in the right of way. We want to make sure those things are protected. And the only way we could find to do it is some level of involvement with municipal operations with the property owners. And it's a free permit. There's a waiver process. We've made it, in my opinion, as simple as you can make it to do stuff in the right of way that we're concerned about. Outside of just saying we're not going to regulate it and hope for FDOT to come through.
It's a telephone call.
What's that?
It's a telephone call.
Yeah. I just, I didn't realize it was just a telephone call, but, and then my other question was how you mentioned that, I guess it's the state's jurisdiction, the right of way. Are we in any way in conflict with like if we allow something that maybe the state wouldn't have, or if the state requires a permit, but Public Works says it's okay, is there any conflict there?
There shouldn't be. Again, if it's a new home construction, reconstruction, a larger scale projects that you see up and down A1A, they have to get an FDOT permit anyway because they're doing the proverbial curb cut. They're adding driveway, they're doing landscapes. So there's a whole bunch of steps you got to do with FDOT. What FDOT has indicated to us that they're not going to do is if you do some landscaping, you plant some bush, FDOT's not coming. They have a consultant that reviews half the county out of a pickup truck. So they're not really here and engaged and involved And they basically said they're not really looking at those types of improvements. They'll look up the more formalized improvements, something that we saw with the Benjamins when they put the gates and the walls and all this landscaping. They'll look at something of that scale, but smaller one-off type stuff, they're not doing it. So, and that was our concern. And in our secondary and our side streets too, we just want to make sure we keep our infrastructure clear of, being impacted by improvements.
Mayor, couple of things. I don't understand something. A1A is a state road. And when I Googled this 2 years ago, these are their right-of-way easements. I mean, why aren't we having Ingrid look at the state code, the FDOT code for all of the easements? These prevail. We can make it tougher, but we can't make it lesser. So I think these need to be cross-referenced with, which is what the vice mayor was referring to. We need to make sure that what we're proposing could exceed these, but cannot be less or can't be in conflict. So that needs to be looked at. And there's a Florida state statute here that allows fully for easements on any property, state or town owned for, won't read you the whole list, franchise cable, any utility access, persons, vehicles, stock, which we don't have, cattle, natural gas, reclaimed water, wastewater. I mean, these are state statutes, so I don't know why we can't cross-reference these. And then secondly, Boca Raton, where our town planner used to be employed prior, has an excellent, superb set of regulations for swales. And they would also, like us, involve A1A as well as town streets, as well as county. And so I wondered if she could relook at those and just let us identify our swales.
Sure.
But really, trees shouldn't be in a swale. They shouldn't be in a swale or a right of way. I'm not talking, the occasional palms, the royal palms on A1A, but coming in and planting an oak tree or something of substance right in the first 20 feet of a private home or 17 feet on A1A really isn't judicious. It's supposed to be there for safety. So I think we need to relook what we're stating is allowed in terms of shrubs, overgrown landscaping, and trees. I don't think that should be in there. And lastly, there's the 411 dig, which I believe is a state ordinance. If we could check that, or county, that's where a homeowner is required to call 411 dig before any kind of a major dig operation, particularly in the easement. If that had been done, on the side streets, the electric wires and the utility wires, the cable and telephone, they're not even running conduits. They're just dug into the ground, and there goes the orange wire, and they pour 6 inches of soil over it. It's very easy to get in there with the landscaper and just cut it. They've been cut all the time in my neighborhood. And so this needs to be, addressed. So if we could really maybe take a harder look at those areas before putting this through, I think that needs to be cleared up.
Yeah. Well, we're ways away from putting it through for sure. Okay. But
I
in
can
terms of
provide these
swales,
to everyone too.
Nothing goes in the swales, and that's where we all are.
Yes, sir. But one last thing, the point is to ask the utility companies to address the town for a permit. This isn't trying to nickel and dime our homeowners. This is so that the utilities come in and advise and get permission from the town manager to dig, isn't it? Isn't that how this started?
That's exactly how it started.
Can we just reaffirm that
That's
position?
exactly how it began.
Okay.
And that's the point.
What people are supposed to do before they dig and what they do are unfortunately two different things.
Exactly.
But checking with Boca, great idea. Take a look at what they have. I'm sure some of that was done, but not all of it. We should definitely do that. Total agreement.
Does our planning and building department actually have the new builds get in contact with FDOT? Is there any kind of a process? Is that
Yeah, we require
included? I'm
permits.
just trying to remember.
When it's a significant project, we say
Yes.
you can't start until you show us your FDOT permit.
And you, okay, I'm just
Yeah.
double checking, because in the old days that didn't happen. Okay, thank you.
But also all the small things. And, Miss Allen will take a look. I'm sure she still has access to all those files. Okay. I'm sure she probably did to some degree already.
She'll tell you all about it right now.
Probably
Actually,
wrote
I
some
just
of them.
wanted to bring up a point. I think the intent, and there may be several, of this ordinance was really to address personal improvements, right? people who are right, going into the right of way, adding a tree, then they dig too deep, break a water, have some sort of water rupture. So I think that was maybe at least one of the ideas of this ordinance, was to address personal improvements. And again, I believe I referenced at the last meeting that I did look at Boca Raton. I basically mimicked what they have with regards to what can be placed in a swale, all this dome language, mailboxes that did come directly from Boca's code. But I'll be happy to look, as Ms. Gossett-Simon mentioned, some of the other state regulations.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we mimic it. Let's see what it is first and see if we want to. We're a small town. What we do to a great degree is to make life easier for our residents, as long as it doesn't have a negative impact on our utilities and on the running of the town.
Very good.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Yeah.
Two things. One, we should be able to incorporate all of that by reference. You don't have to state everything in,
Right.
just say,
Right.
state says we have to do this, so here's the reference to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Second, is there a list of prohibited trees, plants, whatever?
Yes,
And
ma'am, I have one from Mounts Botanical Gardens in,
So then could we incorporate that into this so that it's, okay, call us and we'll come and see if you're going to hit something. But by the way, these are things you cannot plant.
I think that's in
things
the
with
landscape.
Extensive root systems, for example.
Yeah.
I think that's in the landscaping ordinance. I mean, all the things that are allowed, not allowed, no?
Well, but
no, it's not in it.
but we should have that. People should
Sure.
be able to
Yeah.
have, even if we put it in the handbook, someplace so that, because people aren't sitting and reading our ordinances. So, but we should have a way of telling the public, okay, you want to make it pretty, but don't do this.
Yeah, there may be a handful of plants or trees that have extensive root systems that are going to wrap themselves around the conduits that are running there.
Yeah.
For
And
example.
most people, if you tell them what they cannot use, they'll find something else.
But it's not just about the type of plant, right? It's also the location of the plant, like how far away from these things.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah, well,
it's too
Absolutely,
dimensional.
but the location is why you call Pat, who will
Right.
go out and say, okay, you can't put it there, you can put it over here. But before he even comes, you have to know what you can plant or can't plant.
Mayor, I have two contacts I can provide to you and to the commission and Marshall that can provide that information.
That'd be great. Thank you. Anything else from anybody before we move on? Okay, let's
So-
move on to,
So what do you want to do with this? I'm sorry, I apologize. Are we sending it to the planning board with something or bring it back with some additional changes first?
bring it back here.
Okay.
please. Thank you. Yeah, I think when we send it to the planning board, we should at least be comfortable with it at this
Yep.
stage. Let's move on to B, which is continuing the discussion on the fire rescue. Can be found on page 62. And I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Marshall. Follow up on your email.
Yes. So yeah, I did send an email. We did get some of our first series of requests for records and information from Delray Beach yesterday morning, which makes many of the commission assignments incomplete at this point because I can't imagine you all spent last night staying up all night crushing the homework assignment, right? So, I did get some additional requests from information from some commissioners too, saying, how about this? How about that? So to really get into discussing assignments, I just think that they're incomplete at this point in time. And I think it would do a disservice as we take on the serious subject to do it incomplete reporting until we get through all of it first. So I would suggest maybe if you want to have general conversation about where we're at or not at all, but to say that we should do all of the individual commission reports at this point seems a little bit premature. And if we maybe hold off until the 20th meeting, that way I can hopefully get as quickly as I can that other piece of information that each have requested. And then we can start, tying those loose ends together.
Makes sense. However, if each of us continue to communicate with Marshall. If you find we're ready before that, we can certainly call a special meeting.
Sure, sure.
Because I'm not going to, before I said time isn't really of the essence, but it really is. Marshall and I were working on our PERT chart and looking at what the time sequencing is, and we found that time is definitely of the essence. There's a tremendous amount of work to be done. I can update everybody, though. I did meet with the mayor of Delray, and we really spent a good 45 minutes together. And she's a pleasure to work with, no question about it. And she's very professional. And the sum and substance of the meeting is she fully understands our position and does not hold it against us in any way at all. The financial end of it is really pretty simple in her mind, that this is what it costs them to service our needs, as they look at it as our being one of 6 stations. I tried to explain to her that in our view, we need to start from fresh in looking at a new arrangement, not as one of 6 stations, but based on what our needs are, not just what their needs are. And I reminded her, of course, that half of the calls, or half of the trips that are made out of this station, go to Delray. So in looking at it from our side, we're not one of 6, because half of what we do is for Delray, not for us. So I suggested that we start over again and look at a whole new, fresh look at what is required here, and that the costs that we're incurring are just too much for what we're getting. And she said, I get it. I totally understand. However, she is not considering that they should cut their price in half because we're getting half the service. Okay. But they're having a meeting in an hour and 45 minutes. They start at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and she will be bringing their commission up to date on, one, the history and where they stand right now. She said, I don't know what my commission is going to say. They may say, well, if that's what they want to do and they think it's only worth half, then let them go on their own. Or they may say, geez, we do need to open up the contract and start from fresh because we need them as much as they need us. And we should take a fresh look at it. She says, I have no idea what they're going to say. So I said, listen, it's really in your lap now. You know what our feelings are. So let me hear from you on what you would like to do, but let me hear sooner rather than later, because we need to make some decisions on our end. And if you're not willing to open up the contract and start to look at this from a fresh set of eyes, then we have no choice but to give you notice. So that's kind of where it was left. Okay. Part of his friends, total business discussion. She's a very nice person to do business with. She was very honest about their needs. I was honest about ours. Okay. That's where we are. Nowhere. Okay. So I agree. Let's just keep plowing forward and keep doing our homework. Get our act together. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to update the commission. I have discovered my research is far from over. It's difficult for people to get back to you in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks notice on a big issue. But upon looking, I discovered 2 fire departments, one Indian River Shores in Martin County, which is nearly the same population and size as Highland Beach. And they established their own.
Excuse me, where is this?
Indian River Shores, Indian River County, 2 counties north.
Close to Vero?
Yes, sir. Barrier Island, 4,000 residents. I provided you with some data on it. They have a public service department with police and fire and paramedic, fully cross-trained. It's been operational and is working very well. So I wanted to provide you with that data. I wasn't aware of that prior to making some calls. And secondly, the municipality of Coconut Creek is in the process of splitting with Margate in Southwest Broward, and they're establishing their own department. And I believe what seems to be happening, as I've talked to several people, is as our population in Florida increases daily, we're looking at 2,000 residents a day right now, then departments have greater needs focused on their own communities, and they need to sort of reconsider their positions. In the older days, one department could maybe serve 3-4 local towns, and now with everyone built out, population booming, this is sort of a trend. So I just wanted to provide that. You have data there on both of those fire departments.
Thanks, Peg.
Comments?
Okay.
I just wanted to share with all of you again, and especially since we probably have some people in Delray watching this. I had really an interesting day traveling around the fire stations with Chief Tommy, his deputy, and I met with a number of their captains and their fire force and EMS. Here's one impression I got, very clear one, because everywhere we went on that day, and Marshall was with me, it seemed like there's another fire engine racing off to another problem, and there's an ambulance racing. I mean, it was constant all day long. No matter where I went, we were confronting Delray engines and ambulances on the run. So then when you think about our fire station here, our fires, 116, what is the mission of this fire station? And it seems that over time, this fire station here in Highland Beach is really a Delray fire station that serves South Delray. And it was clear to me, and in conversations, even Chief Tommy had to admit, they're going to have a fire station on South Federal to service South Delray. But the issue I see is, and as the mayor has stated, over a 3-year period, we've averaged, 2,000 calls to Delray from us versus 400 calls from Delray to Highland Beach. Did I say that right? 2,000 calls to Delray from Highland Beach, 400 from Delray to us. Clearly lopsided. And that's over a 3-year period. Okay. I just want to finish with, I feel that things are broken and we need to fix it. And I'm sure that, you'll begin, I'm glad you have a relationship with the mayor that can help at least understand where we can proceed with them or not.
I think that we should table this until we have more information. That right now, we don't have enough to discuss anything, really.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. Next is Financial Advisory Board recommendation. Their recommendation was they basically recommended that we continue to work on the 3 objectives that we set, the 3 strategies that we set. They liked all 3. And they also stated that once we got to the point where we decided which of the 3 we were totally going after, they were ready, willing, and able to work with us. And we're fully committed. I think that was it. Let's now move on to item C, which is charter review. That's on page 65.
So Mayor, I'll take it in from there. So basically you've had 5 applicants. You see those 5 applicants in your cover memorandum. Linelda has placed an ad in the Coastal Star that's currently circulating. So we've kind of extended the application date to April 14th to see if we can't get some more applicants or interested parties to put in their application. So my guess is that on the 20th, we'll present back to the commission the applicants that are in place. And we further the conversation either to the extent of placing individuals on the charter commission or determining the number, the date at which you want to do that. And again, you left yourselves pretty much an open lane as to how you wanted to proceed. If you want to do 5, 7, pick from the list, appoint who you may want to independently. So we'll have that conversation on the 20th, but we just want to let you know that we've been sending out the e-blast. We've been advertising. We put a formal ad in the Coastal Star. So to date, you have 5 interested parties.
Refresh my memory on the timeline that we established.
So basically to start sometime in May and conclude around August,
So we should make
roughly.
our decision then on the 20th.
Potentially. So as you see, we have 5 applicants. If you know of some others or you want to bring others that you think would be suitable, you know, if you want to let us know ahead of time so they can fill out the paperwork or they can fill it out after if you decide to appoint somebody, because that's generally how it has been done here is each commissioner selects a member of the Charter Review Committee and then Glenn, Linelda, and I take them forward through the process.
Personally, I know everybody on this list so far except for one. So are you planning to give us their paperwork on the 20th?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Or I can have Linelda get it to you ahead of time. So Linelda could do it
That would be
in the
best.
next couple of days, just so you know. Again, if you know other parties that are interested, or if any individual commissioner knows somebody that may represent your interests, needs, desires, commission, they would be a good person, then have them come forward, set an application so we can get them in the mix.
Well, if they're already on one of the boards, you have their paperwork, you can just take copies of that paperwork.
Correct. If you know somebody that you think would be great that's already on a commission on another advisory board, nothing prohibits their participation in this one-time commission or
Okay.
review board. So, yep. And we would have it if they're already seated. They've already been vetted, if you will. So,
Okay. All right, so let's put it on the agenda for the 20th and we'll make our decisions then, okay? Any questions on that before we move on? Everybody good? All right. Consideration, this is now item D. This is the discussion we had and now we got to decide on residency requirements for board membership. That's on page 69. And staff did some very nice research for us. Basically, it came up with all the other communities require residency. If memory serves me right when I read this over. Yes. Thank you, shaking your head there.
Yes, that's true.
All of them. All of them. So we either continue the way we are based on seeing what everybody else does. And what's interesting is there are some towns here that are very small, 1,800, one town 235. I would guess they don't have many boards or they don't have large numbers of people on their boards.
Suggestion?
Not what I was hoping would come back. Yes, suggestion. Go right ahead. Jump in.
I think it's clear that we're stuck with resident, unless we wanted to change things. But I think then the question is, how do you define resident? The resident can be, obviously a property owner, domicile, voter, business owner, renter. So,
Correct. Good point.
I would think most residents would think, I reside here the full time. That may not be really the requirement.
Very good
If
point.
you're only a snowbird for 3 months, or if you don't even come, but half the time, you can still be on the board. You still have an interest, or even if you own property, even if you rent that property. So I'm just wondering if you can maybe expand the definition of a resident, or at least identify all the possibilities there that might open up the door.
I would suggest property owner. Then you got, what's the expression? You got money in the game. That's not the right
Yeah.
expression, but yeah, you got money on the table, whatever that expression is.
Or if they've rented for the last, what, 2 or 3 years?
Possibly.
Well, we may want to be careful, and I'll leave that to Glenn, to prohibit somebody that rents, but as a registered voter, they would be considered a resident. So home ownership on certain parts too, we have to be careful with as part of that. So
Come on down.
Sorry to complicate it, but I thought, residency needs definition.
Glenn, turn it on.
Turn it on.
Turn it on. Hit the button. No.
No, on the microphone.
Okay, got it. Thank you. It sounds like you're looking to expand it from just residents to people who may not be residents but own property. Is that correct?
Right.
You're not excluding residents, you're just expanding it?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, I think you can do that as long as you have residency or someone, because several of these towns do have ownership on some of their committees as a criteria. Business owner, for example, who, and I know we don't have many businesses, but if you had a business owner, they could be eligible, or someone who owns property and rents it out, they could be eligible as long as you're not excluding residents as well.
Gotcha.
And just because all the other towns require residency still, and I know that's important, but I remember the last time the mayor talked about things like financial advisory board or other boards, you may have someone with great expertise that lives the next town over. You could still do that. You're getting a little out of the comfort zone, but again, this is a unique place. So if you want to be unique, you could be a little bit unique. I stole your phrase, Marshall.
I know. I saw you. That was good. That was good. Well timed. See, it's working. Say it enough, people begin to say it
Invitations,
too.
this is a form of flattery.
So Glenn, just to confirm, if somebody's renting and they're a voter, that should be good enough as a resident, no?
Right? Yes, yes.
So that really does expand things a bit,
Even if they're not a
aside from
voter.
owning property.
I mean, if you're a non-voting resident, you could live here and not vote. You're still a resident.
Yeah.
You can have a fairly expansive view of residency.
I think that's why they use the word domiciled versus property owner, this, that you live, you reside, you're here.
And that's what most people think. Oh, I have to be domiciled here. And that may or may not be the case.
It's different than the homestead exemption concept, obviously.
Yes.
That's a more restrictive concept. That's
Yes.
not the way I interpret your residency requirement to be.
I'm just wondering if that will help you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, it does. Does, definitely does.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I could ask Glenn, please. We do have a fair amount of, shall we say, landlords, particularly, I just discovered this recently when looking at Airbnb about a year and a half ago. Quite a number of them in the south end of town, in the townhomes, so forth. There's a lot of absentee landlords. Therefore, if we did property owner, would that not be a problem? I mean, we've seen our mailers just stacked up like this in some locations where the people who live there don't really care, and the owner is an absentee landlord. So how would that factor into all of this?
Again, that comes back to your discretion. If
Yeah.
you want to keep it as residency, you certainly can. If you want to expand it beyond residency to include individuals who own property in the town, you just have the discretion whether to appoint that person or not. Just because you're absentee, you may be very much interested in the town, or you may not be interested in the town, but all the applications come to you for final decision anyway. So you always hold.
They're just
hold
eligible.
cards.
They're eligible for consideration. That
I
doesn't mean
understand.
they get on the
No,
board.
I understand. Sure. Just raising that as a
Whatever.
point.
Again, I would just, a little bit of reflection on this, not to move too far and moving to loosening it up too much from that. If you do, maybe you start with just non-quasi judicial decisions that are truly advisory in nature. The expansion can be made. But I would suggest we keep the residency requirement for quasi judicial matters. That's the planning board, code enforcement, board appeals and adjustment. Seems to be
Yeah, I
Uh,
more.
agree with Marshall on that.
I agree with that, and I would also suggest that not more than 2 would be on the other boards. So we'd limit it to only 2.
Mayor, what's the purpose of this? Is it because we're just having a difficulty filling the seats?
That, and I'm thinking of one in particular that came to my mind that I sent in to serve on the Financial Advisory Board. And when he took his license out, Linelda said, uh-oh, you don't have a Florida license.
I see,
Driver's license.
And driver's license.
I see.
And this fellow happens to be president of a synagogue, has a very large medical supply company. He is perfect for that board. And
I mean, does he reside, Mike May, does he reside in Highland Beach?
he owns property in Highland Beach, but he resides in Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's what brought it up. When I first brought the thing up, I guess it was 2 years ago, about being able to sit in on the meetings, but not present, not be here, be able to be on Zoom or
Right.
phone. It never entered my mind that you had to be a resident. So I would have brought it up then had I even thought of it. So that's why, and we're missing out on some really good qualified people that can contribute to the town.
Well, the other option would be they could change their residency and get a Florida license.
That's,
I think he has
Is that-
reasons.
I mean, I hate to change a code just for one person, but you're looking at an overall change to allow all boards to be possibly filled quicker.
Not all boards,
Okay,
not the boards that were just mentioned.
sure,
I want to
understood.
start a process so that we have a much larger pool to draw from of qualified people.
We have too many vacancies all the time.
we have too many vacancies and we don't often look for people with specialties in those areas because we want to fill the seats.
With qualified people, we don't have, I don't want to get into it right now, but I think this would improve the quality of our boards, which is clearly one of our key objectives.
Very good.
So
So how would you like to go from here?
So what I'm hearing is you want to keep a broad residency and supplement that with if someone's an owner of property in the town, they may also be eligible to serve on the non-quasi judicial boards,
Right.
but no more than 2 on any one of those other boards.
correct.
Is that the consensus? Seems to be.
Are we in agreement?
Yes.
I don't know. Because it seems to me there are a lot of people who spend, instead of spending 6 months here, they spend 5 and they spend 7 someplace else, who have a vested interest in this town. It's not like they're here occasionally. And I don't know that I want to eliminate them from boards, even quasi-judicial
Well,
boards.
I had another one that I was trying to get on the planning board, and he watched 2 sessions and turned me down. He was pretty well qualified. I mean, it's hard getting people on these boards that are good people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that somebody who lives here part of the year should be able to apply. That
Oh, and
I
you
don't
do
want,
agree.
yeah, I don't want to eliminate them.
Good.
Because these are people really who do have a vested interest in
And
this
they have a
town. They
and they have
go
a-
away in the summer because it's too hot here.
Yeah, and they have a major investment in the
They
town.
have a major investment, absolutely.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Has there been any thought on having us to revert to where decisions by boards come to this commission as a second level of approval? There are many towns such as Boca Raton who do that. We've had that on and off over the years. Would this be an aid to those decisions which are being made possibly without a full board? It's usually,
I don't know, but that's like a whole nother subject.
it is. I'm just
Can we
throwing
hold
that out as another fix for possibly having a lack of boards filled. And we can bring it up another time.
Yeah.
Just saying it's another possibility
I'm
in
with you.
addition to
And-
yours.
and We should debate that.
Yes, sir.
That's,
We'll talk about it later.
it's a big subject.
Thank you, sir.
What do you think, Natasha?
I mean, I guess one question I have is people who have applied, have there been people who have been turned down for the position that it seems like you guys are kind of welcoming everyone. No one really gets turned down.
I have only seen one person turned down. And I've been I've been on the dais for a year, and I've probably been coming to meetings for a year and a half. I mean, the one task is sitting to your left.
Oh, okay.
She's been here the most. I've only seen one person turned down, but that person was recommended for a different board. When I don't think that person got turned down. I think that person did get approved, but one of the commissioners suggested that that individual might want to consider a different board. But that person did get on the board they were applying for. So I've never seen somebody turned down.
No, mostly because we have never had full vacancy, or full boards filled. And that one person ended up moving, so.
But
Yes,
I
sir.
believe one of the problems is when you watch these board meetings, and I know you've been watching some, they're not all qualified to be on the board.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
they're
my
on.
point. I think that, you know, the turning down should be used more frequently. And
It's very hard to turn a neighbor down that wants to serve.
right. But so if we broaden the scope of individuals who can, are we still going to run into that issue where, I mean, I know Evelyn's suggesting somebody who's here 5 months, you know, who's very qualified. You know, what if somebody is here 1 month out of the year? And we tend to accept everyone. Are we putting ourselves in a position of accepting?
You know, there are extreme examples on virtually in everything we deal with.
Right.
And we have to manage our way through it. And if that's a very qualified person, they're here only 1 month, we have a right to turn them down. So you're only here 1 month and we don't think that's enough.
But at this point, if they don't have a Florida driver's license, they're not considered. Their application is rejected, not,
Yeah, but she's
not
saying
the person. is
there's a
rejected.
person that's applying, only here 1 month out of the year versus somebody that's here 5 months out of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to broaden the scope. That is what I would prefer to do, but then I would also like to exercise our right to
Oh, we
turn people
absolutely
down.
can.
But you'll never.
We're not doing that now, you
Yeah.
know? I think
But
we
we-
need to do,
You know what? It's easier to do that if you have multiple applications for a single seat.
Right now.
And
we
then
don't.
you can be a little more choosy.
You'll never be able to turn anybody down if you don't have anybody who
Well,
volunteers. Remember, this
listen.
is a volunteer.
Yeah, I would like to reconsider that, I guess. I mean,
You
I'd
also
rather
have,
not.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I would, yeah, I mean, I think we should turn someone down even if we can't fill the spot, if we don't think that they're qualified.
I agree. I'm just telling you, it's hard to turn a neighbor down. If that person lives in your development or in my building or my development, or I see them when I'm walking on and I turn them down, it's hard to do, but that's our job if we don't think they're qualified. It
Mayor?
just hasn't happened in the 8 years you've been up here.
38, I think. Mayor, one problem is the timing of the meetings, because in the past, I've spoken to many people who are working individuals, and they've agreed to go on a board, but they can't attend a 1:30 meeting. And I requested 2 years ago, considering changing the time to allow working persons, for example, an architect, an accountant, I just think of a few, if we could maybe change the times even to say 4:30 and just joggle the staff's timing for that day, you would be able to get more qualified working
Yep.
people.
The chairperson should be sensitive to that.
Yes, sir. So we might want to look at that as another option.
We
I know
also
that people
have the
very-
option. These people serve at the pleasure of the commission. So we have the ability to remove somebody from the board if we want to as well. So if there was an individual that wasn't showing up to any of the meetings, but always calling in and not contributing because of that, we have the right to remove.
And that
It's a
would be
tough
even
one to
harder
do.
than not, right? That would be even more uncomfortable than just not letting
Yeah.
them go on the board.
So it's, these are difficult.
Right.
Okay. Sounds like we're in agreement.
Yeah,
I
the only
guess.
thing I'd add is residency in the law is such a nebulous subject. So we're talking about having a driver's license, but that doesn't have to be the standard. You could have the standard, as Commissioner David indicated, that if someone is a renter or an owner, talk about an owner, a renter, and you could set a minimum 3 months, 1 month, 5 months, but it may not have to be the driver's license. What if the person doesn't drive? Where they're
No,
just-
that's a good point. I was a resident and I was only here for 6 months, for about 6 years.
So you may be creating an artificial barrier by saying have to have a driver's license. That's frankly, a lot of people are moving away from that as a
Well, I
requirement.
think that's what we're trying to do is move away from that.
Yeah.
Because that's what's been a problem in the
I mean,
past.
Lynell and I can look and see maybe some other ways of establishing residency, but I'm hearing some semblance that people have a connection with the town, whether it's owning property, renting property, they have some skin in the game, as you talked about.
That's the expression.
Whether
Thank
it's
you.
the financial skin in the game or emotionally, I'm in this town 3 months. I don't know what your number is minimum, but I'm sounding like it's maybe 3 months that people are here physically, but that may not be.
That's fine.
So do you want us trying to come back with some expanded definition of residency?
I don't know how you can approve they're here 3 months anyways.
Yeah, I said, how do you approve it? You know, what are you gonna do? Go put a camera in the bedroom and say, okay, you were only here 72 nights, not 91 nights.
Oh, we could have some fun and say, we need a voter ID.
See how much water they use.
Yeah, right. See how much water they use.
How about a library card? Do they have a library card?
Right, there are some people, simply if you have an account with the town, if you have a water account with the town, you're a resident.
Well, but if you're in a condo, which is 90% of the population.
They don't have a single.
It's a little difficult.
70.
Okay, so let's stay with what we have and move forward, okay? Now, how do we implement this?
So Glenn's going to draft up what he just said, give it to us, and we'll distribute it back to you.
Okay. The quicker we can do this, because I got this one guy on a hook, I don't want to lose him. If he sees how slowly the municipalities move, he may back away. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we're on item E, page 75. That's consideration of the Financial Advisory Board's recommendation for a commission salary increase, page 75.
So the Financial Advisory Board had started this discussion a few months back and recently had their discussion, and they moved to approve recommending a 20% increase for commissioner mayor pay. As it's stated in here, that would equate to $2,400 a year for a commissioner, $3,000 for the mayor commissioner.
Start with John.
Well, I've always felt like in the boards we've been talking about, we're looking for volunteers, and volunteers are tough to get. And honestly, if we look at some of the past issues with town councils in other towns as well, we're looking for those who volunteer and view this as a hobby rather than a real commitment. So I've always felt that $1,000 is way too low. I appreciate the increase here as kind of a vote of confidence more than anything. And as such, I would like to thank whoever worked on this, all of you, and again, view it as confidence in us. We are trusted to do what's best for the town. We're looking at millions of dollars worth of tax money here and how it's managed and what we can do to save millions of dollars, which I think is before us today. So I certainly would like to see this happen.
I don't see a need to change it, to be honest. I can't imagine anyone I know who would run for this office for $14,000 as opposed to $12,000. I don't see where that would make a difference in who's going to run, quite frankly. And, we're talking about putting a cap on spending. I don't think at this point in time we need to change it, quite frankly. It was a nice thought, but I don't think it's necessary.
Peggy?
Thank you. Where did this come from, this proposal?
It was proposed by the Financial Advisory Board.
I understand that, but was there someone had a light bulb idea and just thought
Um,
we're overworked and underpaid and
chairman.
exhausted?
The chairman.
Oh,
He saw the amount of work that this commission was doing for the last year and he just thought we were underpaid. So he asked for a study to be done, and then the commission or the board talked about it at their last meeting.
Is it retroactive? Then I'll say yes. Cover my tire fees, flat tires.
Yeah, you could
I-
probably
I-
get a set of tires.
Yeah, I think maybe for my husband's car. It's just odd to think, oh, because I never took this job for the pay. I took it because he's either going to take the job or move. So Marshall's like holding his head in his hands. You know, honestly, this job was a lot more work than I ever anticipated, and I think everyone would agree to that. My husband says we make 12 cents an hour. And I don't know what to say. I feel uncomfortable saying, yes, we deserve a raise, but on the other hand, we probably should triple our salaries. I mean, I don't know 1 week goes by that I don't work 15 hours. And some weeks I put in 30. Some of these big projects, you guys know I jump in and do like journalist research and drive you crazy with a 5-foot stack of papers. But honestly, I don't know what to say about this.
I will tell you, I watched the meeting, and apparently the last time that this commission got an increase was 94.
2004.
2004. So it was just a shade under 20 years. 17 years ago.
I'd not vote. I mean, it's a strange situation to be in.
Yeah, it's hard to give yourself a raise.
It's hard. I mean, it sounds pompous, but I do it for nothing, but I do it for 100K too. I don't know.
Well, you got to think for the next 20 years, people that you want to run for office. And when you tell somebody, oh, you're going to have to work a lot more than you think, oh, it's $1,000 tip that you get. You're not going to attract, I think, some people, and that's unfortunate. I think we see that, honestly, in the ranks of politicians across this country. We need quality people here, not hobbyists. I've said mine.
Oh, that's true.
Done? Natasha?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. It's a ton of work. It is hard to be here at a certain time, 1 o'clock, 1:30, whatever. And I agree. I never did this for the money, for sure. But I definitely agree with John. It's not just about us. It's about the future. It's been since 2004, since it has been reviewed. I think maybe also putting into place that it gets reviewed every 10 years or something like that, so that it's not like this awkward thing for every commission. It's on the agenda every, so often, whatever we decide. And I agree, not that 20% increase is going to change anybody's mind to run for this office, but I do think an increase, since it hasn't been done since 2004, is warranted. And I think that it should be reviewed on a regular basis. And I think, we can't just think about the 5 of us right now. It's about the future as well.
I agree. What do I agree on? I agree that we don't take it for nothing. Okay. If there was no compensation, all 5 of us would still be sitting here. There's no question about that. I also agree that it's a measure of confidence, and I think the Financial Advisory Board was complimenting us on work that was done, and we have a lot of work to do in the future. It's been some heavy lifting getting to where we are now, but there's a lot of heavy lifting coming up. And 17 years is too long for a commission to go without a modest increase. I think 20% is a modest increase, and it's good recognition. I think we should accept it. So I would vote to accept it also.
Mayor,
Yes.
could I just relay this story in case not everyone heard it? There is a town in Broward County, which I don't want to name, and their commissioners were being paid in excess of $40,000. They had travel budgets in excess of $15,000. They had a car, mileage, credit cards, and phones. Now we have phones because of boy.
Well, let's run for that office.
Right, I was just saying.
What are we
Maybe we
doing
should
here?
move south the county. Just want to put it in perspective that there are towns which do not appear on our list, which,
It's, so I don't know, I guess we need a motion. Somebody want to make, John, want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation from the Financial Advisory Board for a 20% increase in the town council commissioner salaries and the mayor's.
Would somebody like to second it?
I'll second.
Okay.
Mayor, excuse me, could we amend that if so to establish a period as the vice mayor suggested that we set in as an ordinance or put something in place to review the salaries once every 10 years?
I'm out.
I think we need a double motion here.
So to change your salaries, it does require introduction of an ordinance. So if you guys approve it today, at a minimum, we'd bring back for a first read and a second read.
Is that what you were about to say?
No, actually, I mean, I saw Marshall, I knew he was going to say that. We get that little telecommunication going on, but it is very difficult to increase your salaries. And if you put it out 10 years, it's going to be difficult then. Do you ever think about an annual increase of 1%, 2%, 3%, so that it automatically goes up every year and not having this debate and discussion whenever you need to?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we do a CPI?
Or CPI, something that's tied so that, again, you're not having to do this however so often it is.
Are we comfortable with CPI?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So add that, John, you want to add that to your,
Yeah.
Okay, so I move that we accept the Financial Advisory Board's recommendation for a 20% increase in the salaries of the commission, and that we will institute a CPI increase for future years,
effective with the annual budget.
effective with the annual budget.
Marshall, are you comfortable with that?
I can make all of this happen. Are you comfortable with it? That's really the bit. No, I'm not trying to say it in a weird way like that, but if there is anything you're going to get static for, this will be it. So.
Yeah, and again,
So there's a motion on the floor. Commissioner David, you're seconding that amendment to the motion?
Yeah, I think it was me.
Oh, you seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I got more. Now, do you all want a roll call vote before you continue to discuss? Okay, Commissioner Shoemaker,
yes.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner David,
Yes to bringing back a written ordinance.
and Commissioner Gossick Sideman.
Maybe?
Come on, yes or
Can we do a
no?
maybe? I'm wishy-washy on this. I don't know. All right, I'll go with my colleagues, and especially if we set forth a policy for future wonderful commissioners to pick up the ball and run with it when we're all done,
So your motion is your yes. Mayor
I
Hillman,
guess.
Yes.
motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Now you can discuss.
Well, if we're going to discuss, it's too late. We already voted.
Okay.
No,
It'll come back on a first read.
yeah, we'll discuss it in the next read, I guess.
Okay, that takes care of that. Now we're on to new business. This is now discussion of the fire hydrants and services on private streets. And Peggy, this one's yours.
Yes, sir. It came to me as an email last week, was it 8-9 days ago? The president of the homeowners association sent me an email stating, and it's former Commissioner Reese's husband who manages their property. And as you can see by your amendments attached, they're on a private street because apparently it's too narrow to be lawfully a town street. And they are charged annually for fire hydrant maintenance replacement. And Marshall's shaking his head. So I wish you would have shook your head last week. But then there was allegedly an $11,000 bill that they were charged with. So then I wondered, how many other private streets do we have, such as the street that Carol Stern lives on, Camino Cove, I believe. And then just wondered what's the status of this. I presented it to my commission so that we can talk about it in an open meeting. Marshall, is there something incorrect about all this?
Well, Matt, I'll bring you up to speed on some of it. So the $11,000 is the cost that the enclaves had to pay for a private line into the hydrant. So that was a private repair. We don't maintain private hydrants. However, those condos as well, it's not for maintenance. It's a privilege charge, as you hear in water, which is if you have a hydrant, it's unmetered water. So whenever you do work on it, if there's a fire, you're not paying a water bill, but annually you are paying a privilege charge to be tapped to the water main of the town to provide that water should there be an emergency. So for my folks that are in condos here, if you have a fire, you're not paying a special water bill for putting out the fire or what use of your private hydrants to do fire suppression. But there is a cost to maintaining or to be part of that system. So they pay that annually. So I'll let Matt talk about, again, these are things that we're cleaning up since we've inherited. But Matt, will you talk about the enclaves bill and some of the confusion that was there, please?
I sure will. Good afternoon. There are roughly 40 properties in the city that get this assessment charged to them. And as Marshall said, it is not sort of a misnomer to call it a maintenance fee. It is an availability fee. And there was a determination made a number of years ago by a prior town manager that the flushing that the town does on all of the pumps that are on places where we have right-of-way access, we do flush them twice a year. Those on individual, like Boca Cove, for example, on a private street, we do not flush those. But there's two Boca Coves. There's the Boca Coves enclaves, and then there is Boca Cove itself. We do take care of 4 hydrants for the enclaves, but we do none for Boca Cove itself. No, we do not.
Flip it.
The
There are-
enclaves is the private portion, so we don't take care of their 4 private hydrants. But Boca Cove that's on, is that Highland Drive? Or is that on Bel Air?
Highland.
On,
Oh, wait, Russell, you're right. It's Russell
on
Drive.
Russell.
Yes.
That's on the public road. So we take care of the hydrants that are on the public road and the road right of way. So basically what Matt was getting to is that if a hydrant is located on private property for which we are not granted an easement or have an easement, those are pieces of private property. So the availability charge is probably a better word than privilege. It sounds a little bit kind of snotty, sorry. So the availability charge is to those that are on private property to supply the water to it. But we do take care of our hydrants in the public right of way or in any type of easement dedicated to the town of Highland Beach. Now, what we also had, I'm just going to jump in at this point. Okay. So we had some transition of staffing and we missed a year on that billing when we were between the original deputy finance director. Then we got a new deputy finance director to come to find out that they were using QuickBooks for some reason at some point in time to do tracking of the availability charge payments, then to move to a spreadsheet. So now that we have a new financial system, it's all in our BS&A. So when the bill came out, they got kind of a double charge. And I think that may have grabbed the RISA's attention to say, whoa, what's up with this? It's a $2,000 charge. Well, it's also for missing a year of charges. So it was 2 years kind of stacked into the last bill. Some of our condo folks may have seen those or your management company saw those bills come through.
That is correct.
Okay. So again, it was, some of our legacy systems here, I can't figure it out. I ask Matt, he can't figure it out. He just shakes his head usually at me as to why were we using QuickBooks when we had a utility software. But
One other important thing to point out, though, besides that little bit of administrative history, is that A comparable charge is imposed by most of the other surrounding jurisdictions around us. In Boca Raton, they charge a $250 annual fee, much
Oh,
like,
Okay, we don't need any more on this. It's not for the commission. It's internal billing stuff. I don't think the commission needs to deal with this.
Okay, well, just in case if you get any more calls, that's kind of the history on that. We got it cleaned up. It's now back into our new system. Again, I think the double billing kind of maybe grabbed them. So that was the issue, but it's on our fee schedule too. So it's something that we always charge.
Unless Peggy,
Mayor?
are you suggesting that, we not charge them or something like that? It just seems like it's a billing issue.
If you want more information, talk to Matt offline. I don't think this is a commission discussion item.
Mayor, I have a question. If we have 40 this was just new to me. I was out of town. I said, put it on the agenda. I don't know about this. And I love to bring everything to a public meeting. But if we have 40 properties who have this sort of a setup, it was news to me. I just wondered, what's the status of the other 39 properties?
They've all been billed and paid.
So this is standard procedure in a town.
Standard procedure.
Okay, thank you.
it's
Do you
a
have any
once-a-year
more?
billing. It
Go
was
through that.
missed 1 year. There is basically 2 billings being done this year to catch up for it.
Second question, do we have more than 2 streets that are called private streets? For example, is the mayor's and Evelyn's development? Those are private streets considered also. Do you all have fire hydrants
Sure.
within your property?
Condos
So
have.
you have the same situation? Okay, this is just news to me. I've only visited there once. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Let's move on to item B, which is yours, Peggy. This is your item. This is to approve you for the League of City Board. This is quite an honor to be a
It
board
is.
member.
Thank you. I mean, it's cool.
Well said, Mayor.
Keep me off the private streets and the fire hydrant issue. For sure. So apparently Mayor Ann Gerwig of Wellington nominated me to serve on the board
That's terrific.
in an upcoming position that opened up. And I said to Marshall, I usually attend those meetings, either on Zoom or
Yeah.
in person because they allow us to understand the workings of good governance and what our towns nearby do and throughout the state. I mean, when you drive Florida, let me tell you, you get north of Indian River County, it is a different world. You go to the West Coast, it's just such a diverse state that I sometimes forget. Living in this area 35 years now, I sometimes forget, wow. So it is an honor, and I said I needed to pass it by you all because I'm just not going to assume a seat without a consensus. And then, of course, I would be able to bring back everything to the commission. And, everyone on the commission is included in these meetings, the third Wednesday of every month, but this would empower me to have a vote in anything that would come up that we would then take to the state and say, yes, this is how we feel about Airbnb. This is how we feel about derelict votes, that sort of thing.
I move we appoint Commissioner Gossett Seidman or allow her appointment to the board for Florida League of Cities.
And I second. it.
Second, yeah.
Third, fourth, and fifth.
You got 2 seconds. All in favor, say aye.
I'll go. Okay. Thank you,
No,
guys.
that's-
Thanks
I
for
mean,
your
we're-
vote of confidence.
We're joking around, but no,
Yes, I
that's
know.
really terrific. Because now, now we have a say at a very high level.
Yes, sir, we do.
And we can get things on the agenda.
Yes.
It's terrific. Little
It's just
old
great to
Highland
get our little town, the name out there.
Yeah.
People know who we are a little bit more.
And you've given us proof with all your pictures with the
Oh.
governor and, all the different
That was
politicians.
hilarious.
And thank you for doing it, Peg.
No problem. Thank
That's
you.
great.
Very much.
Now, you don't have to carry a third telephone, do you?
Maybe, maybe.
Okay, let's move on to commission comments. Start with you, John.
I met with our town clerk and deputy town manager, Linelda and Teresa, to work out a plan for adding a tab to our town website for veterans as we go forward. I'm now collecting and creating enough content that we can start basically posting pictures of veterans that we could click on, and then you could see either their story, if it's been written up, or pictures that they may have submitted. It's all about the heroes of Highland Beach. We've worked through a plan, and now they're going forward to review it with Marshall and to take the steps with IT to actually create this on our website. And so that was a very successful first discussion in our plans. I want to thank Commissioner David for making reference to the program for veterans in your latest newsletter to the town. Well appreciated. And I just recently interviewed former vice mayor and former commissioner, an 8-year time where he served, John Rand, for the town of Highland Beach. He is a World War II veteran. Incredible story. Can't wait to write it all up, but he spent time in Burma with Merrill's Marauders, if you know anything about our military history, as well as Chenault Flying Tigers. He was providing the communications from there to Washington, D.C. It's unbelievable. So it was, and then of course his time as on the dais for the town of Highland Beach. So we're making progress, feeling, it's so exciting to talk to these people. I mean, this is my third now interview of a World War II veteran in Highland Beach. When people would say, do we have anybody from World War II in Highland Beach? And oh yeah, and there are more. So, and I'm working on that. I've got other appointments already scheduled. Anyways, so that's the side project that I'm working on, and we're working on the website to deliver on that as an ongoing historical resource for the town well beyond my time as on the dais as a commissioner. Thank you.
I thank John for all his hard work, and I think calling that Heroes of Highland Beach as a tagline is a wonderful idea,
Thank you.
because that's what it is. And that's all I have to say.
Back to Peg.
Okay, here's an update from Tallahassee and some really cool stuff. I'll try not to ramble too long. So I wasn't aware when I was going up there that we would have access to so many elected officials and appointed officials. Very interesting. And most of them spoke to us for between 5 minutes to an hour. Just give you a brief update. Secretary of State, I typed it out because I just wanted to get organized. Secretary of State Laurel Lee explained that the Florida Department of Justice is doing so much more than hits the headlines. 2 examples. They had email threats against Florida voters, and the State Department of Justice traced them to Iran, and they were able to sever them in time to basically ensure a valid election. Another one was interesting. When the COVID hit, we were able to obtain immediately high-quality masks from Taiwan. They had an abundance. They had a connection to Florida. They shipped them to the state. Found that interesting. CFO Jimmy Petronas discussed how last year's veto of $1 billion in bills was a record. There's a chance we will have another amount vetoed this year, but hopefully not as many. Attorney General Ashley Moody discussed the legal system and how her top priority is maintaining safe communities throughout Florida, from coast to coast. Speaker of the House, Chris Sprouse, who's a cancer survivor and a former assistant prosecutor, explained how the state is cracking down on internet piracy. And there's a lot of problems. They found 4 professors at University of Florida with ties to China. And they being the state and local law enforcement went to round them up. They had all flown out in the middle of the night. When law enforcement got together to compare notes, their systems crashed at the exact same time, their internet systems, which they found not unusual, but not unexplainable. Another case, the Moffitt Cancer Center was harboring a government of China person who was obtaining information and transmitting it unlawfully back to China. Then we heard from Visit Florida CEO Dana Young. Before COVID, the state had 47 million visitors in 1 year who spent $91 million. This year, we're down $20 million in visiting, especially from Canada. Apparently, Canada told their residents, their citizens, if they traveled, that they would lose their health plan. So they did not travel. A few did. Also, she noted that for every $1 spent by a tourist, it saves every person in Florida $3.27 in terms of wages earned, benefits, and having no state income tax. Basically, our income tax is paid through the tourism. Then Governor Ron DeSantis spoke to us. He's a graduate of Yale and Harvard Law, but my favorite note about him is he batted fifth on the state National Little League team, won the country championship. He stated he never thought in his first term of governor there would be a pandemic. And he has tried, though some people disagree, other people support him, that he has done his best job and surrounded himself with people of both parties to aid his decisions along the way, but it has been totally unparalleled and unexpected. He said his biggest challenge now is trying to get silly putty off of the carpets of the governor's mansion. It's the first time there have been small children in the governor's mansion. He hopes to do the best he can on the budget. We'll see how it goes. His favorite area is $100 million in grants if you have matching funds toward sea level rise, flooding, other issues that affect us, Southeast Florida. He's pushing that very strongly. Met with both our Representative Caruso and our Senator Tina Polsky. Both gave their full support, what they can do for our town. They will be doing for the rest of the areas, but they're both very well aware of our town, small as it is, but our town's needs. Also ran into John Kennedy. He's a reporter for Gannett News Chain. He explained, I said, gee, where's all the reporters? He said, well, he files now for 18 newspapers, where there would have been 17 other reporters there. He's now filing for that many. So if you see news repeated, that's why. John, this might interest you. US 27 was named a Purple Heart Highway, but for years now, FDOT never put up any signs. So you might want to get on that one. Just don't know why, I haven't gotten around to it. League of Cities, quickly, the bills that are moving in our direction are, hang on, I have to read. Drones capable of being used by police for any public safety and security anywhere. There are certain restrictions if you're near an airport, but they're looking at making those restrictions not apply to police departments. The sea level rise bill is moving quickly. The wastewater discharge bill, this bill is trying to move up the timeline to close off some of the wastewater dumps into the ocean, canals, and so forth. The league opposes that, though I don't know. I'm not clear on why. They just think that it's not fair, that it can't be implemented in time, that it should still be the 4.5 year out. Home-based business is not going well. It looks like it might become more of a state regulation. Not sure why that is either, but the state feels that home-based businesses need to be accountable based on taxes being paid. So we'll see how that goes. The Wayfair bill is moving along and everyone appreciates that. And that is where businesses who conduct business from out of state will be taxed because residents don't pay tax on that. They're looking to have the state acquire those taxes. And that's basically the synopsis in a short version of 5 days.
Hey, you covered a lot of ground.
Yes, sir. There's more, but those are the main things that affect us. Thank you.
Thanks, Peg. Natasha?
I don't have anything.
That's good.
Now, ma'am, just one thing I want to add for.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, Peggy, for giving me the reference on John Rand. That worked out really great. So thank you.
He's a great guy. I go to him several times and say, hey, John, what happened 20 years ago? And he's got it like that. But thank you for following up.
Okay. Just quick update. We met with Chris Layton and his gang we meaning Marshall and I, for the work that will be done out front. We haven't gotten anything back yet, no renderings, but they're working on it. They don't do landscape work. We found a landscape architect. We'll be meeting with him this Thursday, see if we like him, and talk about what has to be done there. So that's progressing. Nothing to show yet, obviously. And that's all I've got. So I'll turn it over to Marshall unless anybody's got any questions. Nope, all yours, Marshall.
Thank you. Got a message from Lois. Glenn could go last. Lois has ordered the book, Mr. Elliott's book, so that will be on the shelves here at the library. Most of our residents that have written books that we find out about, Lois does a very good job of bringing them into circulation here in Highland Beach. So those watching next couple of weeks will have a copy of that book on the shelves in our library. Other items, manager's minute, Highland Beach communications. We did all receive that email. I think that's probably the best way to go. I think that was a good suggestion. Teresa and I have been struggling trying to get the Highlander out because it's such a random issuance. It requires a different type of writing or article that can stand maybe more of the test of time, where it's not fresh news when we are embarking on something that's going to involve a lot of resident impact. So, yes, sir.
Why don't we drop it entirely and just put money into mailing yours?
And that's where I was getting to say, you'll see that here next week. I like that idea. So Teresa, put your hand through the thing. Give me a thumbs up that we got it all set. We got it all set. So it's going to be going out with the mailing house. So you'll get that. It's going to be bulk to save money rather than first class. So the thought was during high season, we'll hit it every month. When it gets into the summer where it gets really slow, maybe not as many issues. This year may be different as we embark on this fire journey. But again, it would be, maybe say November through May, it's every month. And then the summer months, we kind of group a couple of those months together to save a few bucks, but just to send that out because it's now become routine. Staff's used to it. I'm used to it. Teresa's used to it. So we can move that through and get those issues back out to residents. So we're going to mail that out as well. So that's
Can you include extra copies for each of the condo clubs that, they could hand them out?
Yeah, we could probably make some copies in-house, have a stack right now. We're going to just do the bulk mailing to all. We're also going to see if we can't segregate the mailing list to mail to single family townhomes and then distribute stacks to condos for the mailroom. See if that could save us some money.
Yep.
But again, this because of the fire stuff, I wanted to get some stuff out. I think we really need to keep residents and get them involved as far as read the study. And if residents are listening or watching this later, please read the fire study. It's really important to get caught up on that.
They're not going to read it. And if they do, they won't understand most of it.
Page 7. So that page 7 kind of summarizes it, but read the executive summary. How about that? It kind of distills it down to 7 or 8 easy to digest pages.
Leave it at that.
Yep. But that's all I have. We're working on some of these other things. I'll get your information requests through Delray Fire and we'll keep going.
Mayor,
That's
if I could just make a suggestion.
Sure.
The envelope is a lovely way to send these out. First of all, great that we're doing communication. But I wondered if you could do a trifold, which is less expensive mailing. It would be, I believe, 3rd class, but that's what I did when I ran for office the first time. It's more efficient and less expensive rather than first class mail in an envelope. It's just an idea if you want to look at it. And secondly, a lot of those did come back because they go to the address on file with our town is an absentee landlord and the renters don't get it. So particularly, again, in the townhomes at the south end of town. So you just maybe keep that in mind. They might bounce back.
That's why we hope to clean it up a little bit as we move through it.
And lastly, if we could perhaps say, replacing the Highlander, or we could call it the manager's minute and maybe town commission update. And just given the reference the first or second time so that the people who've been here 30 years and don't get a Highlander say, I don't get a Highlander, this, we explain is replacing that.
Great idea.
Yeah,
More-
next month
more
I'll explain
expansive.
it. And I hope you get the feeling that I write on behalf of the commission with the language that I do use, that we and
Yeah.
us and okay. all right.
Very
Yes.
well done.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else they want to add? If not, we will, 3:25, we will adjourn.